In today's video, it's time for my tactical game film analysis of Oleksandr Usyk versus Daniel Dubois, the rematch. I recently made a video analysing Daniel Dubois' changing mindset, asking the question whether he could go into this rematch of Oleksandr Usyk and with his new mindset try and get a win. But in this video, we're not talking about hunger or belief, we're going much deeper. We're talking about tactics, execution and style. And it's interesting because having analysed everything in depth, I actually don't really believe that Dubois has changed all that much since his loss to Joe Joyce all those years ago. And people have been saying how much better Daniel Dubois is, how much better he's going to be in this rematch. But if I don't think he's changed that much, then what does that mean? I'm going to be doing an analysis of the fundamental issues tactically and technically with the way that Dubois boxes and why that simply did not work for him at all in the first fight. We're going to be looking at the genius of Usyk and how he managed to capitalize on all these openings that Dubois gave him. And believe me, there are some massively overlooked fundamentals about the way that Dubois boxes that I will reveal for you in this video. And trust me, I think you're going to find them quite surprising. Honestly, when I clocked it, I couldn't quite believe what I was saying out loud myself. So it'll be interesting to see how you all react to that one. But once you see that, you'll realize why Usyk had such an easy time of it in that first fight and why, without significant changes, this could be the same story all over again. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. Guys, I hope you're having an exceptional week. I've had a very busy one. I've just started work with a new client, and I've been preparing this one for a little while now. I've been really studying this fight hard to try and give you some valuable insights about the first fight, why it went the way it did, about why Usyk was so brilliant in that fight, and about why Daniel Dubois struggled so much. And indeed, I'm definitely going to be trying to think about how I think Dubois can approach this one in a different way from the tactical perspective, because so far, all anyone's really talked about is that mental game. You know, I made that video, I think it was last week, about Dubois and about how his mental evolution potentially is the thing that is massively different about him. The confidence that he has, the way he's been able to apply himself in the ring. And I think the new levels that he hit with that in the Anthony Joshua fight. But this one very much is about the tactical nuance, because I don't necessarily think mindset alone will be enough. And I don't think if he goes in there the same way he did in the first fight, I certainly don't see Dubois winning the fight. I mean, that's an obvious thing to say because Usyk very easily won by stoppage. So yeah, we're going to jump into this one shortly. By the way, for those of you that thought I met Conor Benn, that was a joke. I did not meet Conor Benn. But if you'd clicked the extended comment bit that showed you the full caption I wrote on my post, I posted that because it was Tom Holland. And I keep getting comments saying I look like Tom Holland, which I'm not upset about. I'm not mad about it. But it was quite funny, all the people that actually thought that was me. So there you go. I guess I do look like the bloke. But yeah, like I said, I'm not complaining. But just to clarify, he wasn't in Australia. I'm not in the UK. It was not me. But I will be back in the UK in a matter of weeks, which I'm very much looking forward to. Just before I jump in, don't forget to bang a like on this video, guys, if indeed you do like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to A Guy Called Henry if you're new or if you've been around watching for a while. I'd really appreciate your support. Hit that notification bell and get your comments in the comments section below. What do you make of these tactical observations? And right now, who have you got winning this fight? Also, if you would like to help support the channel, you can buy the fight via my link in the description for DAZN. You just click it and it costs you exactly the same as usual. All it means is that my channel gets a small share of the revenue, and I really appreciate it as it helps keep moving the channel forward. Now, to begin, I want to start with defense. And that might sound a little bit boring, but trust me, it's not. Defense is one of the most important factors in this fight, and namely the way that Dubois chooses to defend. Now, how Usyk goes about his business in terms of his defense in the boxing ring is he's got a bit of everything. You know, he can move his head, he can move his feet, most importantly. He's got incredible feet, in my mind, the best feet in the heavyweight division. He's super balanced, super composed, and his reflexes have been elite. But the big thing that I think is also interesting about him is he will put his hands up. He will take a shot to the gloves. But it's this defensive variety that can make him particularly hard to pin down because you can't always predict what he's going to do. There are certain defensive phases you can get him into that for Daniel Dubois will be more beneficial. And we'll talk about that in the offensive part of this game film analysis. But in terms of defense, Usyk does a bit of everything. Now, I said in my intro I'd noticed something about Dubois that I've not really heard anyone talking about. And maybe it's because it's so obvious that people are just choosing not to discuss it. But I've not heard any top pundits talking about this. I've not heard anyone talking about this. So I want to call it out here in this video right at the start, because I think this is actually a crucial component of why Dubois has lost his fights that he's lost. And it's something that he still hasn't added to his game. And I've watched a lot of Daniel Dubois to double check that I'm right in this. Because it's such an obvious thing. I was like, I must be being stupid here. But anyway, those of you that have watched a bit of Dubois by now will know that his primary method of defense is his legs. You know, he bounces in and out of range. He's actually far more mobile and athletic than I think a lot of people realize and give him credit for. I think a lot of that's just down to his sheer size. You know, he's a big, bulky guy. He looks very, very powerful. And you'd expect him to be a bit of a destroyer, but actually, a lot of his attacks come from the out and mid ranges. When you look at the Jabber AI statistics from his fight against Anthony Joshua, most of his attacks were from the outside. You know, he's not a guy who actually does a lot of inside work in the ring. And in order to do this, he requires great footwork. But indeed, if you watch the way he defends when people throw punches at him, is their bounces backwards. He bounces in and out of range. He goes backwards. If he takes a big shot, if he gets hit clean, he'll always move backwards, using his legs to get out of range. He'll also use dips. He'll get his head off the line, and sometimes he'll throw as a method of defense. And the biggest adaptation, the thing I think he's really improved on in recent times, is that wedge defense. We saw him try and use it against Hrgovic. It didn't really work too well, although it did mitigate some of the power on Hrgovic's right hands. But in the AJ fight, he completely, for the most part, neutralized Anthony Joshua's straight right hand with that wedge defense. And again, it suits him. It's like a reactionary, proactive thing. It allows him to push off and move backwards, again, incorporating his legs. But what's the one thing he doesn't do? And why is it so important against Usyk? Why was it so important in that first Usyk fight? Well, Daniel Dubois either can't, either won't, but I can tell you for a fact that he doesn't really ever block punches. And I know that sounds strange, because he's a big guy and he's always got his hands up, but he doesn't really block punches. I've said for a while now, I believe that guard to be an illusion. It's not really there. Like, his hands are there, but they serve very little purpose other than to be in a particular position to throw counter punches or to, apply that wedge defense, as I showed you a moment ago. And I think it does tell us something mentally about Dubois. I really don't think he likes being hit. I don't think he likes to feel contact. I said this before. I think it's something that he might have shooken off a bit now. He seems to be more accepting of punishment in the ring. I think that the Miller and Hrgovic fights definitely showed us that. AJ didn't really land enough punches for us to see that again. But I think now that he knows he can hold a good shot, something I think was called into question mentally for him after the joist damage when he took the shots to his eye. We saw the remnants of that in the first Usyk fight. But I think now that he's willing to take punishment and continue to come forward, and again, I spoke about that in the mental video, I think he might have gotten rid of that a little bit. But I do wonder if originally that was why he doesn't ever really use a guard to block shots. I mean, literally, I watched all the way through the Miller fight, the AJ fight, the first Usyk fight. I looked at the Lorena fight, and I think there was only like maybe 4 times where I actually saw him block punches with his guard, with his gloves. And of course, a high guard is something that can be manipulated. It's not always a good thing, but it is also the most basic way that you can block punches. It's one of the most basic ways that you can apply pressure is by taking shots to your guard. It allows you to save a bit of energy because it is energy sapping the way he chooses to defend. He's always bending his knees, loading his legs, bouncing in and out of range. And when you're a big, heavy guy, that is going to tire you out. And the question is, I suppose, why was this so important in the first Usyk fight? Why was this lack of high guard, the lack of desire to take shots to the gloves, a massive problem in the way that Usyk performs in the boxing ring? Well, I'm going to break it down for you now in the footage. So this is right at the start of the first round, and instantly Usyk set the tone by landing a clean shot to Dubois' face. And it was this here for Usyk that really controlled the fight. The lead hand of Usyk in this was absolutely exquisite. And the thing about Usyk is, he is an extremely mobile fighter himself, so he essentially is better than Dubois is at the thing that Dubois uses the most, which is moving his legs. Usyk's got better legs than Dubois does. He really was able to tire him out without actually even punching him, Oleksandr Usyk. What he would do is he would feint constantly stick his lead hand in Dubois' face, and there's 2 different components to that. One is, as I mentioned, Dubois before this fight had his orbital bone broken against Joe Joyce. And I think that Usyk decided to really capitalize on that, really, test Daniel Dubois' mental resolve over that injury. But also, because Dubois defends with his legs, because he's a reactive guy defensively, and because his reaction is to move his legs, it's an energy-sapping thing, every time Usyk would feint with conviction, Dubois would bounce out of range and back in again. So that gets him working, that gets him tired. But also, speaking about the fact that Dubois' guard is an illusion, if I show you this situation here, you'll see Usyk steps in here, and this is actually an interesting thing to show you because this shows you how he made advantage with his creative offense here, Usyk. So he dips down. This is what I want to show you. The first thing, Usyk dips down, and you see the position of his hand here. It's out in front of him. It's almost like a fencer almost. And normally I'd say that's a little bit risky because he does leave his chin a little bit exposed. But if you watch what Dubois does here, if he doesn't move his legs, like I said, his guard is an illusion. And look at the shape of his guard. I've always said this about Dubois. He's essentially got this sort of triangle shape where the elbows are sort of quite flared out. And it means that he's got this gap up the middle. And this offers no protection, this guard. It really doesn't. It is, as I say, an illusion. And you'll watch what Usyk does. He comes, I'll just rewind it. He dips down. And by dipping down, he changes the level of the attack and he exploits this gap here through the middle. And from that position there as well, you take advantage of the fact that you've changed the level. Dubois is more likely here expecting a shot to here. But instead, what does Usyk do? You'll watch, he comes up through. There, look. And he catches him. Now, there's another thing to analyze here. There's a lot going on here, actually. And it's only when you slow it down that you can really break this down. So he comes down here. He goes up. Now, Dubois' reaction here. You see what he's done? He's stuck this arm out. And that is the wedge defense. I don't think he's trying to jab Usyk there. I think he's trying to push him off. But because of Usyk's southpaw stance, it's much, much easier for him to get inside that. And, you know, it's something we saw with AJ. Eventually, AJ was able to start getting his head off the line when he landed those right hands just before he got knocked out. He got his head off the line and got his right hand up the middle, thereby getting his shoulder inside the wedge defense. But if you're just throwing your right hand like AJ was for the rest of the fight, like Hrgovic often was, then you get the wedge there. It stops the right hand from getting him. And then against AJ, what he did was he tucks his chin in right behind that shoulder there. So the punch would just roll over the top. But what Usyk's done here, as I say, is he's got his own head off the line slightly. And he's got his hand straight up the middle. And he's cracked him clean. And Dubois had to take that on the chin. And then you see his first reaction after that is to take a step backwards. And I think that for Dubois, one thing he cannot afford to be doing in this fight is going backwards. He needs to be on the front foot. He needs to be trying to pressure Usyk and get to Usyk. If Dubois is moving backwards, I don't think this is a winnable fight for him. Again here, watch. You'll see Usyk shifts his way into position. So extends his lead hand. He dips his legs. Dubois takes a little half step back because that's how he defends. He uses his legs. And Usyk brings his back foot forward. You see that there? He's edged it forward. Dubois hasn't really moved from that second one. He's kind of masked it. And then Usyk throws his lead hand in and he catches Dubois on the chin there. And you can see, look where Usyk's head's ended up. It's gone from here to here. And also, Dubois, as you can see, has extended his arm. Again, that wedge defense remnant, I suppose, not really working for him and getting caught clean. And Usyk lands the jab clean again. Now, I like this one because it shows you how the two work off each other. They're not quite in range yet. You can see the feet have got a little space between them. Usyk's got that high guard as he approaches. And again, Dubois is very loose and ineffectual. So Usyk comes forward here. And now watch, this is great. So Usyk leans in, but he doesn't throw. He opens up that lead hand. He does like to circle that lead hand round and round like that. So he dips down and comes up again. And as he does that, he brings his feet in. But you watch, Dubois has taken a little step back there. Because again, he's reacted with the legs. So Dubois decides to step in here, and he can. Gets his foot nice and close. He steps in. But Usyk just pulls back. One little jump backwards, and that was it. That was all it took. And now Dubois has got his weight on his front foot. And Usyk can see that. So watch what happens here. Usyk steps in instantly. Because he's just got much, much quicker feet. Dubois is leaning forward. Usyk steps in. And boom, he hits him clean. And look, what's great about this? It's a mixture of things again. Look where his lead hand is. It's down here. And again, he's coming up through the gap in the guard. Shooting up. Boom. And again, Dubois, what does he do? He extends this lead hand again. It's to try and push him off. But again, with the southpaw stance, it just doesn't work. He really can't be doing that. If Dubois is going to do anything there, the modification that he needs to make, I'll just show you now, is he needs to get his head off this way and throw the right hand to the chest. If he does that, as you can see, then he can get his head off the line and he can stop Usyk and push him away. But it's riskier because the right hand comes from a little further away. It's a more committed shot. And if Usyk does something else, then he leaves himself exposed. So it's a risky equation, but that is an option for him. Now, this here is a variation on how Usyk used the lead hand, and what I just showed you before. There's many examples of it during the fight, and I'm not going to show you all of them, but just want you to get a feel for what Usyk was able to do. Now, this is the second way that Usyk would use the jab, and it was to, while he's circling around this way, which is away from Dubois' backhand, which is very smart, moving in an anti-clockwise direction, counterclockwise, I should say. The great thing about moving counterclockwise for a southpaw is it lines up their backhand with the line, takes you away from their backhand, and creates the angle. And at the same time, because Dubois does have this habit of having this lead hand quite low, and like I say, he doesn't really block anyway, as Usyk goes on the move here, you see watch, he steps in, he fires it over the top of the lead hand there. And all he's thinking about doing once he's landed that is to get around, to create another angle. So watch that, he ends up over here. And again here, watch, there's a good gap between them, but Usyk's feet are elite. He skips into the space, and as he does it, boom, over the top of this lead hand here. And in this position, if Dubois could get his head off the side, the wedge defense actually would work. But it'd be difficult because, again, Usyk's moving around this way. And because of the variation, it's so hard for Dubois to know what to do. So anyway, he hits him there, he skips around. And Dubois takes a step back, so he doesn't quite get the angle there, Usyk. But again, Dubois doesn't want to let him get around him, so he has to step back. And that is how Dubois defends, as I've been saying. But this is sort of a jab into a hook almost. And you might remember that punch, and we'll talk about that in a bit. And just to show you this one as well, because this shows you a little bit of a mixture of things. But again, I think for Usyk, a lot of it depends on where his feet are, the angle he's got for the attack. This time you can see that he's off to the side of Dubois here. So the best thing for him to do is to go around that way, because otherwise he'll kind of cross Dubois and he might get caught with something. So watch, he steps his foot outside. You can't quite see it there. But he dips down as he does it. Look, he's here. He dips down. again, Dubois' lead hand comes out because that's what's always going to happen with Dubois, well, more or less. And then Usyk steps around, boom, fires up the middle. And he doesn't quite get the angle again, but again, Dubois has to go backwards because you can see if he doesn't move, then Usyk's got this angle on him here. And we can see how Usyk starts to incorporate the backhand as well. The straight left, the southpaw backhand. Watch. So that's the backhand there. This is great. So as he steps in here, he feints upstairs. He just touches Dubois' guard there. And he's kept the jab there in Dubois' face. And at the same time, if you watch his feet, he does a little sort of angular pendulum step. So watch, step in, step across. He gets the angle on Dubois there. And you'll see his head comes across here. And he lands the right hand to Dubois' chin. Boom. And Dubois' guard, like, look at it. It lands there. Dubois' guard is actually pushed out like that. It's his reaction. It's his tendency. It's what he does. He pushes his hands out when he's trying to stop you from hitting him. I've never seen Dubois just posture up with a high guard, take the shots and come back with something, catch and throw. It's not something he seems to be able to do. Another one here, watch. Usyk sticks his lead hand in Dubois' face. See that? He's just blinding his vision. And again, it allows him to move his feet in. So he takes a step there. He does another jab up the middle, but he pulls it short. You see that? He doesn't give Dubois the contact. And again, watch what Dubois does with this jab hand. He sticks it out, comes out, and he's trying to stop Usyk from throwing the backhand, but because he's had to go through Usyk's lead, it just doesn't really work. So that Usyk gets his head outside this hand here, and he fires the backhand up the middle, boom, and he catches Dubois on the chin. Again here, just to reinforce this idea that Dubois' guard is a bit of an illusion. You know, again, you can see how wide it is. You can see the spaces that are there, and you can't even see his other hand. There's a huge gap up the middle. Usyk here, all he has to do is step in, and he doesn't even really have to get his head off the line. I mean, he does a little bit. His head definitely moves across to here, goes from here to about here. But then he just fires it straight up the middle because there's that big gap. Boom. That's a nice clean backhand. And again, last one I'll show you this because it just shows you the way Usyk uses the angles. So from this position here, he's pretty much on the center line of, if you imagine there's a line between the two of them, he's pretty much on that line. So he can decide here which way he wants to go. And when you think about where his feet are there, when you think about how square Dubois is, and he definitely has a tendency to be square, I've talked about this before, Usyk does his little shimmy in. He feints low actually this time, and he brings his feet in as he does that. Now his feet are there, plants his front foot, and he fires that up the middle. Boom. Look. And what's brilliant here is, again, you know, Dubois is trying to get that lead hand in his chest to stop him from landing the shot clean. But Usyk gets his head so far outside that the lead hand of Dubois goes over his shoulder, and Usyk fires up the middle. And that's one of the cleanest right hands in the fight. Backhand, left hands in the fight, in my opinion. That one hit him clean. And just to show you those two shots put together, and this happened a few times in the fight. I think I counted about 4 or 5 occasions where Usyk would land a 1-2 or a lead jab followed by a hook or something like that. See here, there's a gap. Usyk dips down, extends his lead hand. It's this posture, though, this stance here that he takes up. He goes down, he drops his lead hand out to here, and from this position again, look at Dubois' guard. It's just an odd guard, to be honest with you. Down, then he pushes forward from there. He's in the spot, plants his hand, lands that jab. And again, because Dubois is going to move backwards, this can be quite hard to do because he will be moving away. But then Usyk this time immediately fires the backhand as well. Doesn't quite catch him, manages to defend it with his shoulder a little bit. But as I say, Dubois' reaction, get out of range, get away. And one of the best tools for Usyk in this fight was that lead hand. It was how he stopped Dubois. And you can see in quick succession here, when Dubois gassed later in the fight, when he's tired, the guard becomes even worse. His feet have slowed down, and it's so easy for Usyk here to get the stoppage. So we'll show you this one here. So Usyk stepping forwards. You can see Dubois not reacting anymore as much. And look where his hand is here. It's low. His chin's exposed. Look at his feet position here. His feet are like together like that, 2 little poles. So he hasn't got balance there. Usyk steps in. Boom. Clean shot. And again, it's, you know, he's had to take some bounces back there. But again, it's right on that eye that Joyce messed up. Moments later in the round, similar situation. You know, Dubois, well, not too similar actually. To be fair, it's a bit different. Dubois in front of him. One of the only times I've seen him block a punch, but it's only half blocked. You know, that goes straight through and cracks him on the head. So I'm not even going to call that a block shot. To be fair, so he lands that shot. He throws another jab. Dubois moves off to the side, and then Usyk immediately reloads the lead hand, and boom, he cracks him with that lead hook again. And then finally the finish, and you know he's got him here. You know, Dubois looks knackered. He's bouncing about with his hands are low like this, and you know, again, look, he's bringing his legs together. In these moments, Usyk knows what's going on. He knows this is poor form, and you see he's like, right, I'll step in now. So he starts moving forward straight away. Dubois still bouncing around, hands really low, and then it's really simple for Usyk. He just steps forward and boom, lands that lead hook, cracks him on the chin. Dubois takes a knee. It's not a hugely concussive shot, but it obviously hurt him. He goes down, and we all know what happened after that. So that was the way that Usyk attacked him. It was nothing crazy, but when you look at it, it's very simple and very effective. And I think one of the biggest stresses for Dubois was he didn't adjust to any of this. These things worked throughout the fight. And there were certainly a few other things that Usyk showed him in this fight, but those were the things he did consistently to really create the openings. And as I say, the feints that he was able to use, the fact that his legs are so much faster than Dubois, the way that Dubois bounds in, he attacks from range typically, Usyk can react and get himself away. He can use his high guard. And I definitely think Dubois was apprehensive of being countered, so he didn't really want to press Usyk in there. And in general, you can just see a few moments there where Dubois got tendencies that he likes that Usyk clearly knew about going into the fight. He clearly already worked them out. And he was able to land on Dubois from the word go. And as I pointed out, because he doesn't block punches really ever, everything about this fight was tiring for Dubois. He played Usyk at his own game and he lost every single round. Now, we need to talk about Dubois' offense in this fight because it paints a bit of a picture. And it's something I've actually noticed in his other fights as well. There's a couple of things to talk about here. And like I say, he didn't really win any rounds. And I can't say I've got too many things to say that are good. I will show you a couple of things he did that I think there's potential there. They didn't particularly work with consistency, but there is some potential. So there's one moment here. If you watch Usyk's lead hand there where he's probing away. Probe. And again, he probes in. And this time, Dubois, I mean, often in the fight, he was reacting to this, taking a step back, bouncing in and out. This time, Dubois kind of says, F it. And he dips down and just kind of ignores what Usyk's doing a little bit, which I think is something he needs to do in this fight. Dips under that lead hand of Usyk and fires the right hand as the body there. Now, I can't see where it lands exactly, but I think it lands a little bit clean. And, this is how few clean shots there were for Dubois. We have to show stuff like that. But dips down, throws the right hand to the body, goes under the feints. Now, interestingly, this time, I feel like Usyk got the angle slightly wrong, and Dubois actually made a good angle for himself. And you can see that what happens here is that Dubois has got this sort of nice picture of Usyk here, where Usyk's slightly side on, and Dubois can see up the middle here. And as Usyk extends his lead hand, Dubois just steps forward a bit, kind of does take the lead hand of Usyk slightly, but he actually just turns his head with it ever so slightly, and it gives him an angle up the middle of Usyk there. You see that? And he misses, but then what happens is because his arm is now locked through here, he's got the body, and he fires in that uppercut. And that was one of the better body shots that Dubois actually landed in the fight. And I think there is something to be said for Dubois trying to find this angle a little bit more, where, Usyk hasn't stepped his foot. You can see Usyk's foot here. He's probing here, but he hasn't stepped in Usyk. So you see he's actually a little more static here, which means, and Dubois is the one moving, you see. Dubois is the one, watch, Dubois goes from here to about here. Look, he steps in, and as he steps in, he gets the angle. Boom. So that's interesting. I think it's rare that Usyk's static, but the moment he was static, Dubois took advantage of it. And that's part of this conversation around has Usyk slowed down? Will we find him in more static moments during the fight? For Dubois, he absolutely needs to pray that that is the case. Now, this phase here is, I think, the key for Dubois. He's got to get Usyk in this moment. If he can get Usyk in this moment, I think he's got a chance. So you see here, they're facing off with high guards. I mean, as I've said, Dubois doesn't mean a lot, but Usyk will go into a high guard from time to time. It's usually to catch a breath, and he'll move his legs, he'll get away, keep his hands up. But watch here. When Usyk's in this position here, when he's not moving his feet as much, when the high guard is up like this, he hasn't got as good vision, but also exposes this area here. So what does Dubois do here? He leans to the side, he loads the front leg, which means he's loading the lead hook, and he just commits. He slings it into that space there. He lands a really nice body shot. And what does he not do there? He doesn't follow it up. He lets Usyk out. Look, he bounces back. He lets Usyk get away. That's not good enough. He can't be doing that in this fight. He's got to, from that position there. Okay, so he stepped in and landed the shot. Now, from here, he needs to cut this exit here. So you could sling a big right hook in there. He could throw a right hand and step his back foot in to cut the angle there and just go for him on the ropes. In those positions there, he's got to commit hard. Again here, same thing. Usyk's in this high guard. Dubois got him on the back foot. So he's moving around Usyk. He's trying to find an exit. Dubois jabs to the guard there. Usyk lands his own shot. Kind of makes Dubois a little apprehensive, but then he does step in. Watch, throws that jab, and then boom, he throws to the body. And Usyk does exit here, and I think it's hard to press him there in that situation, but he landed it. And you'll often see Usyk do that when he's moving laterally, when he's on the outside, he'll move on the turn like that. There's an opportunity there to stick them to his body. We saw Chisora do it quite well. And look, I'm not going to go through every time Dubois landed a clean punch because I don't think they're indicative of any particular pattern of success. There was only a few clean shots he actually landed in this fight. I think those were two particular situations where I do think there's more to capitalize on. Every time Usyk goes into that high guard, jab up to that guard, bring it up, go to the body, press in those moments, really go for him in those moments. Because you're safe when he's got that guard up. He doesn't really counter out of the high guard too much. I say you're safe. You're as safe as you're going to be. But unfortunately, that's where the good things run out for me to talk about. And what I now want to talk about is this tendency Daniel Dubois has to foul. I said before that he doesn't really use this high guard. Most guys, when they're in trouble, they'll get their hands up, they'll make a nice tight guard, they'll try and ride out the problem, they'll try and get through the round, and they'll reconvene and come back to the corner, and then in the next round they'll come out again stronger, hopefully catch their breath and come back and do something a bit different. For Dubois, I think his natural reaction, or one of his natural reactions when he's in trouble, is to throw low blows. And I've seen it in multiple fights now. I saw it against Jarrell Miller. I saw it in the Hrgovic fight. In that fight, he was chucking his head in. And in this fight, he landed, I think I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Over 10 low blows that he landed in this fight, which is an absolute disgrace. It's unacceptable. If you're talking about a fair boxing match, look, I've always said this. I, as a fan, pundit, analyst, whatever you want to call me, can sit here and say, I hate it, it shouldn't be allowed. But I also understand and accept when you're a fighter in the ring, you get away with whatever you can because you're just trying to win and you're fighting, right? It's boxing, but there is a degree of fighting too. But it's on the referees to get a grip of this. And look, it culminated in that massive moment. That massive moment. They've tried to rebuild this fight around. They've tried to build up this rematch around. People have tried to say it was controversial. It absolutely was not a controversial low blow. It just was a low blow. I'm not going to break it down for you again. I've done that in other videos. Plenty of people, plenty of pundits have shown you what a low blow is and quantified exactly why that was a low blow. But let me show you some more during this fight. I do think part of the reason that Dubois hit Usyk with so many low shots in this fight is because Usyk's so good at making himself a very small target, very compact. If you watch here, when Usyk's got his guard up here, look how low he dips. He actually covers, because he bends his back. He hasn't got the longest torso, Usyk. With this guard here, he actually covers every hittable area except for here. That is where Dubois needs to go if he's going to actually try and hit him. Let me clean that up a bit. That is where Dubois should be aiming this low blow. This punch, sorry. And he does try to. But watch, because Usyk's moving backwards, he ends up in a different position. And Dubois isn't fast enough. I don't think this is a deliberate one, to be fair, but he does land it very low. Look how low that is. The first contact point that's the first position it moves. There. That is so low. A legal blow would be like that in terms of contact. So that's super low. Here's another low blow. Now, you can't see exactly where this lands, but if you watch the trajectory of the punch, keep in mind that Usyk's belt line is here. He moves around. Dubois' punch, it ends up somewhere around his thigh. That's mental. I don't know if that actually landed, but that's trajectory-wise going very, very low. Seconds later, he tries to get his head outside Usyk's jab and throw this one. Again, this lands extremely low. That's ridiculous. That's the safety point there. That's a ridiculously low punch. Another one here. You see Dubois dips down, slings in his right hook, tries to go to the body. Again, that is low. Just to be clear, guys, that's the line there of the belt. It shouldn't be landing below that. You can have a bit of the glove below it, like that sort of thing, but there's no way the majority of the glove should be below the line there. Here's another one. Dubois dips down. Usyk goes down, and again he's covering the safe zone. Again, look where that lands. That is a low punch. Here's the big one. Dubois dips down, fires in that backhand. It's not the best angle, but we all have seen the other angles. That is low, and Usyk takes the break there. And to be honest with you, it's people say, "Oh, did he buy time or not?" It's an accumulation thing as well. He's constantly getting hit low. It's going to hurt more and more. And here's the other angle of it. You see there. It's just clearly below the belt line. It's clearly a low punch. Again, that sort of thing would be okay. That is not okay. Another one here. Dubois dipped down. He slings it in. Again, you can't really see, but again, it looks like that's the belt line. Let me undo that. The belt line is here, and his arm is there. So he's most likely landed that low. And Usyk instantly complained about that one afterwards. Again, Dubois dips down, slings it in. And that one it's better, but it's still arguably low. Like, when you look there, it's the line is here. So it's still mostly below the line. Again, I think that is low personally. And finally here, you see it's the same thing again. Dubois dips down, slings in his backhand, and it's hard to see exactly where this one lands. Again, it looks to me, though, like if you look at the line, that one's probably pretty borderline. But again, you can see as Usyk turns around here, it looks, I mean, yeah, you can see that angle there. It looks low. It looks low. So the point is that Dubois can foul his opponent quite regularly. The Hrgovic fight, as I say, the head was used a fair amount. In this fight, I've taken the liberty of going through there and showing you all the low blows, or at least most likely low blows that I clocked. There was probably a few more as well that I haven't put in that list. But the simple fact is that I think the referee, one, has got to control this. Two, it shows you Usyk overcame, constant fouling. It shows you the mental strength of the guy. But three, Dubois has got to be better than this. You've got to be better than your only success coming via fouling. It's just not good enough. It's pretty weak, to be honest with you. And it's creating a narrative around him that a lot of fans don't like. A lot of fans really, really don't want Dubois to win. There's many Brits. Patriotism is massively out the window when it comes to Daniel Dubois because they don't like the fact that he's fouling constantly in these fights. And people aren't stupid. They can see what's happening. And they can see that there's narratives being spun. The team around him are probably telling him it's legal and whatnot. Like I say, he'll get away with what he can, but do I like it? Absolutely not. I don't like the fact he fouls to get wins, or to try and get wins, to try and be in a fight, to be competitive. So in summary of the way that the two guys attack, I believe that speed, reflexes, footwork, it's kind of everything for both guys. but Usyk is much better at all of those things, or has been. And again, that's the question mark over this fight: is has Usyk slowed down at all, and has Dubois sped up a little bit? Maybe. It could be more competitive this time. It could be closer, because it only takes a very small marginal ability in this area and have the intelligence of Usyk to make it seem like it's a much wider gap than it actually is. So for the last part of this video, I want to ask the question: what can Dubois actually do differently? Tactically, what can he bring to the ring this time that might help him to win? And look, we talked about in my mindset Dubois video, has Dubois changed? We talked about that Derek Chisora fight, the tactics we saw from Chisora that were effective against Usyk in that fight, but there's some important caveats there, and that is to say that Usyk was still filling out to heavyweight, as a couple of people pointed out. Rightly, I should have included that in that video and mentioned that, but it was true. He was still coming up to the weight, and he definitely looks thicker and stronger now at heavyweight. I don't think he would have had to run as much if it was the Usyk we see today in the ring against Chisora. And indeed, Chisora will get hit because he'll put his hands up. He'll take those shots and he'll get himself into advantageous positions by doing so. And this is my point. If Dubois can add a high guard, one where he's willing to take shots, to give shots, I think that'll make a massive difference. I really do. I think the way that he wants to bounce in and out of range, if he could actually block shots as well, then you're talking about a very, very well-rounded fighter. And at the moment, he's really lacking in that area. He just gets hit too clean too often when someone has, equivalent hand speed, good feet, good timing. We saw it with Joe Joyce. We saw it with Hrgovic even, who he doesn't move very fast. His feet aren't the quickest, but he's got nice accuracy on that one too. So yeah, if he could block punches, I think it would really, really improve him. Just get your hands up when you bounce even. Just have your hands in a tighter position. And essentially, when he does have to step into Usyk's space and try and walk him down, I think nothing wrong with trying a high guard from time to time. Mix it up is what I'm trying to say. But look, Usyk still beat Chisora even in that mode and in that time. And Chisora is a far more proficient inside fighter than Daniel Dubois is. And in that sense, do I really think Dubois can make that change? Tactically, I don't think so. I'd be surprised. I'd be very impressed if he came in and was able to fight that way. The second option that I see is sort of sprint bursts, is really going for him in sprints, in bursts, in moments. And the rest of the time, just trying to avoid getting hit. Now, look, if Dubois is going to be moving his legs as he normally does to defend, I would suggest really getting on the back foot and moving lots and lots. The problem with that tactic when you're as big as Dubois is, Usyk could do it against Chisora, to try and reverse the roles. If you're going to let Usyk come forward and then pick your moments to be the aggressor, the problem with that is I think Dubois will gas relatively quickly if he's moving that much because he's just too big and too heavy. I don't think that would be a strategy that suits the kind of athlete he is, but it's worth just kind of throwing it out there and saying, is that a possible option for him to be able to move around the ring, use your legs to keep away as much as you can, and then just find your moments and absolutely go for it. I just think he would gas and fatigue, and I think we'd see a similar outcome. I think Usyk would probably stop him again. And again, it requires Usyk to have slowed down. And the final thing, which is the tactical part of what I mentioned in my Has Daniel Dubois Changed video, because I do think that it is that shift into just being a destroyer, being a come-forward assassin, that might be what wins him this fight. And the tactical approach for that is, let's skip the boxing. I'm not going to pay attention to your feints. I'm not going to worry about any of that. I'm just going to be too powerful for you. I'm going to overwhelm you. But again, the problem with that is we know Usyk can stay away. And again, it would rely on him having slowed down. And what about Usyk? Do I think he's learned anything in the meantime? Do I think there's anything he can add and he can change? The only thing I would say is probably the uppercut. And that harps back to Ben Davison's advice to Anthony Joshua that Joshua didn't implement correctly in his fight against Dubois when he said, bring it up, fire the double jab and bring it up. Because when you jab, typically it is true, Dubois does dip down. He'll dip his head down, he'll dip his legs. And therefore, the uppercut is very much on. Usyk kind of took advantage of it in this fight. His shorter stature, he dipped down. I showed you how he'd fire the jab up through that gap. So he kind of already knows about it. But for sure, the uppercut could actually be an additional weapon for Usyk in this rematch. But ultimately, I wouldn't say Dubois has shown too many new openings. I really don't. I just think he hasn't been in there with guys that could really exploit them the way that Usyk could because their feet were all much slower than Usyk's. So I think the two main areas that Dubois can improve on coming into this one, realistically, I think get his hands up and actually block punches a bit more. I still think that's something he should be able to add to his game, but maybe he just can't. And also I think just finding the right angle a little bit more, use lateral movement a bit more, try and find the right angle to attack Usyk. Double jab to that guard also, go to the body, bring his guard up. Every time Usyk's in a defensive phase where his guard is up, you've got to try and take advantage of that. But ultimately, I think his best chance is throwing caution to the wind and really, really going for Usyk because he does look super effective when he does that, or has looked super effective when he's done that in recent fights. And there was definitely moments in this Usyk fight where Usyk was on the back foot, he was moving away, and Dubois didn't press the gas pedal when he could have. One thing I know for sure is that Dubois is going to have to hold his feet more in this one. And the problem right now is when he holds his feet, he gets tagged. I think the fight that I look to in considering a route of victory. The only fight I can really think of that he might be able to take something from is Teofimo Lopez against Vasily Lomachenko, because Teofimo was the bigger guy in that fight. But the problem with that one, again, is I think Dubois is very athletic, but he does not have the boxing IQ that Teofimo has, and Teofimo was very, very good with the jab in that one. I think whatever Dubois does in this one, he's got to get behind a stiff jab. That, extended lead hand he likes to do, where he sort of tries to do the wedge defense. When he gets into that phase where Usyk's feinting and he's trying to match Usyk's lead hand, because again, he defends with that lead hand, he defends with his legs. It just doesn't work. He's got to just have a high guard and just ping your jab out with power. Be more destructive with the jab. And again, that's easier said than done. Usyk's very, very difficult to beat. But again, and the final thing I'll say in this video, because I've had that weird realization that Dubois actually just can't or won't block punches, as soon as his legs start to slow down, he starts getting pinged. Even in the Jarrell Miller fight, Jarrell Miller is not a prolific lander of shots. He was cracking Dubois clean because Dubois' legs would slow down at times and he would get to him. There's always going to be moments in fights, because Dubois is so big and heavy, because of the way he likes to defend, he is just going to end up sitting in the pocket and getting tagged. And he simply can't afford to do that in this Usyk rematch. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this tactical analysis, this tactical breakdown, the way I saw the first fight playing out, the things that I thought were really important, and the realizations I've had about both fighters. I'm not making my prediction right now. I'll definitely be doing that in fight week when I've analyzed a few more things, because I do think, as I said in my Has Daniel Dubois Changed video, when I talked about the potential shifting mindset with Dubois, I do actually think the mental game for Dubois is the key to him having a genuine chance in this fight. There's a couple of tactical pieces of advice in there, but ultimately I think tactics will kind of have to go out the window for him if he's going to take this one, because Usyk was just so clearly so far ahead in that first fight. And ultimately, I think that in a weird way, people might not see it this way, but I actually think that they're kind of similar in some ways. I just think Usyk's so much better at what he does than Dubois is. And I think when you talk about what does Usyk have to prove, well, I always think when you take time away from a boxer, when you watch a guy who he's beaten already go on a mad run of knockouts, sometimes you can think they've got a lot better, but actually sometimes it can just be the people that they were in there with. But I guess we're going to find out in less than a couple of weeks. If you've enjoyed this one, guys, do bang a like on the video. It really helps the channel grow. I really appreciate it. Get a comment in the comments section below. What did you make of this? Do you agree with some of the things I said in this video? And who do you think is going to win the fight? Please subscribe to a guy called Henry if you're new. We are growing rapidly. We're continuing to push on in the boxing world, and I'm absolutely loving it. And also, please don't forget to use my link in the description to buy the fight via DAZN. Really helps to support the channel, guys, and I really appreciate it. Thank you all so much for your time, and as I always say, on to the next one.